This video will teach you how to set up your options and preferences for the first time you open 3D Studio Max. The first time you open, you'll be presented with this lovely animated splash screen, and unless you want to see it every time you open the software, please uncheck Show this welcome screen at startup, and then you can hit the X to close things out. 3D Studio Max works with 4 discrete views of the same model space. In this case, most often we're only going to want to see one view at a time. So note there's a faint yellow line around the outside of the current perspective view. That's the one that we're going to hold onto at the moment. If I mouse down to the lower right corner, I can hit the maximize viewport toggle or hit Alt and W on our keyboard, and now we can see that we have maximized our viewport and taken real advantage of our screen real estate. The other thing we want to do is there's a grid visible on screen, and it is eminently unhelpful. It is currently set up to display 10 by 10 units. What are those units? I don't know. They could be inches, they could be miles. So they're really unhelpful. I'm going to hit the letter G on the keyboard to get rid of them. Now we can come up to the Edit menu, the Tools menu, the Customize menu, and we can choose Preferences. Sorry about that. Within this Preferences menu, there are a lot of tabs. So let's just go through the ones that we need. The first thing I'm going to do, because the computer you're working on has a decent amount of operating memory, is change the number of undo levels from 20 to 50. If you notice everything starts getting really slow, reduce the number of these undo levels and it will reduce the RAM load on the machine. After that, we can tab over to Files. Here we can change whether they want to do a full backup or just incremental saves. I'm going to leave things alone, but this is also where we can change how often the backup interval is. 5 minutes is way too often. I'm going to change mine to 15, especially as file sizes and models start getting larger. Under Viewports, we can change the way that certain things are shown or displayed. The important thing here is to check your display driver. If it's showing something that says NVIDIA or AMD, you're good. If it says anything about Intel graphics, we need to make a change and make sure we're using the discrete graphics card that's embedded within the computer. If your computer does not have a discrete graphics card, you can still use 3D Max, it's just going to be slower. Interaction mode we're going to leave alone, but note if you come from other software modeling packages, you can change the way the mouse feels. Under Gamma and LUT, L-U-T stands for lookup tables. We'll talk about those later in Photoshop files. But in looking here at Gamma, we want to make sure that when you squint your eyes, the outer checkerboard shading here and the inner gray square kind of blend into one another and you can't see an edge. For now, the current Gamma of 2.2 is fine on my monitor. I'm going to leave that alone. Under the Rendering tab, really the only thing that I want to double check here is to make sure we're set for true color. I want to make sure my super black threshold is at 15. If you notice you're doing darker scenes, especially nighttime scenes, and you're losing detail in your shadows, reduce this threshold. Under radiosity, the only thing that I like to make sure is that automatically process is turned on. Animation, we're really not going to do too much in here. The same thing is true with inverse kinematics, which applies to animating characters. Under gizmos, this is where we can change the size of the icons on screen that help us move and adjust objects. So note here you can change relative size percentages if they're too big or too small. After this, I don't even need to see the other tabs. MaxScript is a programming language. Containers we can ignore, and help just tells you where to look for a help file. From here, we're going to say OK, and now we're ready to begin.